And it started in Little League. So, you had two teams go to the Little League World Series, and we won the state 3 years in a row. So it's a pretty special place.
Brownsburg, Indiana, the small town where Drew Storen began chasing his baseball dream, one that led to him throwing heat in the big leagues.
And Drew Storen trying to get the final outs. 9 pitches, 3 strikeouts for Storen in the ninth.
Pitching that immaculate inning, one of Storen's favorite memories during his 9 years playing Major League Baseball.
If you build it, he will come. If you build it, he will come.
Now a new field of dreams for Drew Storen, capturing lightning in a bottle in the bourbon business. His journey from Brownsburg Little League to professional baseball to bourbon maker. Next on the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Drew Storen knew once he hung up his baseball cleats, he'd pursue his other passion, collecting bourbon bottles. Drew loved the history and the stories behind those bottles, and he wanted to connect them to his obsession with baseball. And it fit, hand in glove. Drew now using the actual corn from the Field of Dreams baseball movie to produce high-end bourbon across the country. And I am pleased to be joined by Brownsburg native, major leaguer, now bourbon business mogul, Drew Storen. Drew, great to have you on the podcast.
Gary, thank you so much for having me.
I want to talk about your baseball career certainly in a moment, but want to get right to what you're doing now because I think it's fascinating on a number of levels. You have Field of Dreams Whiskey Company, and you've got a Field of Dreams bourbon product. First of all, how did this all come about? This is it's a unique product. A lot of people are into bourbon. This has a unique selling proposition. But how did you get into this whole idea?
Yeah, so I guess it probably started back in college. I was a product design major, so I've always been into design and really just making cool products. And fast forward to a couple years into the big leagues, and I started collecting rare bourbons. Just fell in love with the idea of buying cool stories. I'm sure I overpaid for a lot of my bottles because they thought the story was cool, but I always enjoy showing people my collection. And, it goes back to Prohibition era. So I was deep in the weeds on that and know like, hey, this is a really cool bottle that until I tell you the story won't mean anything to you. And to see how people just fall in love with the bottle because of a cool story. I was talking to my buddy that helped track all this stuff down. We were on a road trip about 5-6 years ago. And I was like, hey, if we were ever going to do something, what should we do? And we're going back and forth, and that's when we came up with, hey, what if we took the corn from the Field of Dreams movie site and made it into a whiskey? And It was kind of a cool, fun idea that we just spitballed back and forth. Probably took us 2 years before we actually Googled it to make sure nobody else did it because we were too scared because we loved it so much. And when we saw there wasn't an opening, I was still playing. But that's when I knew in order to stop playing baseball, I needed to have an answer to kind of quick pivot. And at the end of my career, I started kicking this around more. I'm like, I think this is what I want to do. And I called my best friend and teammate for a long time, Tyler Clippard, told him I was done playing. And he goes, all right, you got to do the whiskey thing then. And if it takes me cutting you a check to do it, I'll do it. And I said, all right, let's see what we got. I said, if anything, let's do 9 barrels to start. I don't know anything about the business. And if anything, we can just say it was like a distillery trip. We're not going to be the guys that go in and think we own the world because we have a cute idea. But I go, if I learn about the business, then we'll go for it. And now we have close to 2,000 barrels down. And, so it's been quite the journey. And I've been very lucky to have a bunch of industry people that were already in my network that I didn't really know. And, got to learn a lot from all of them.
Yeah. Talk about that. I guess the call you made to Field of Dreams, because had anyone expressed interest in doing something like this before to them of buying the corn from them for a whiskey product?
Yeah, I think there have been a few people that have approached them, but there's certain level of gatekeeping too, and that's something that I take a lot of pride in is telling the story authentically, and adding depth to it. So, there wasn't anybody big that ever knocked on the door and said, hey, we should do this. And I was very fortunate to get in touch with Andy Ray, the farmer that has the lease on the land, and told him, about my background and, here's what I want to do. And, he told me he took that corn into town and sold it like other corn. I said, all right, let's see what we can do. And it's been great. He's a good friend of mine, and it's been so much fun.
We'll talk about the acceptance I've seen on social media, long lines, extending out of liquor stores here in central Indiana and other places. So the reaction, consumer reaction, it seems to be pretty good.
It's been unbelievable. It was something that I didn't mentally prepare for, because I was too caught up in making sure we got it on a shelf. So, when we did the first event in Brownsburg, and I, showed up an hour early to make sure the bottles were there and there was a line, I was blown away, and, still gives me chills. Like it's so cool, because it's, years of work and all the late nights and all that, and to see that those weren't just my friends in line. So I was really happy to sell to somebody that wasn't my friend, and it's really neat, because you have people that are drawn in because of the movie, or because of Indiana, or because of baseball, that we hit all these different things. And even from an ag side, I think from an ag side, we're able to tell the farmer's story. That's what's really cool too, that we just have a 5-spoke wheel of marketing.
You talk about the process, the sleepless nights. Walk me through that a little bit, and that process, because starting a business, launching it, getting it off the ground is no easy task. What was that experience, the business side of things, like for you?
I pretty much just broke it down, try to piece by piece. I talked to an old college teammate who has started a fund with an old Diageo guy. So I talked to him and I said, all right, let's put a honeymoon scenario together. If you were to start something, what do I need to pay attention to? And so just kind of got the rough, and like, what way should I attack? And obviously they tell you distribution's the name of the game. And so then luckily through my network, knew some people in distribution. So I learned a lot about that. And then, learned more about the actual bourbon making process. I was good at the collecting and consuming portion of the program. And then just, then we kind of did a plan of attack with my buddy, Andy Keller and Tyler Clippard. We just would have meetings and talk, okay, here's what are we going to do? What stories are we going to tell? And, just a lot of dry erase board, mind map stuff. But yeah, it's been great. We do all our meetings are 9:00 at night, because then once the kids go down, we do our office hours. So that goes into pretty late, but we're used to the baseball schedule. So we figure we might as well stay on it.
Yeah. You mentioned the kids. Do you have three children now, Drew?
Yep. 3.
How's fatherhood treating you?
It's a lot of work, but it's a labor of love, right? I love it. We got our little girl right before Christmas last year. And then I have 2 older boys. So oldest is getting into T-ball, working into real dad's pitch now. So he's loving it. And a lot of good wiffle ball action in our backyard right now.
Oh, that's outstanding. Hey, before we get off the bourbon talk, where can folks get Field of Dreams bourbon, Field of Dreams products?
Yeah. So if you go to our website, drinkfieldofdreams.com, we'll have a list of retailers where deliveries have been made in Indiana and Iowa. And then also through our website now, you can actually buy it to ship.
Good. So you got an e-commerce site?
E-commerce option that we can ship to 40 states. And so you can go on there. We launched on Wednesday and sold out in under 2 minutes. So
wow.
We had to kind of scramble to work to reload that as quick as possible, because us nor our distribution partner did not anticipate that kind of reaction. So we're trying to make sure to get those bottles reloaded for people so they have an opportunity to get it.
That's great. You've got a tiger by the tail, I think. How about markets? Because I know you're here in central Indiana, and I think you said Iowa. What future markets are you looking at now?
Yeah, we look at where the nostalgia of baseball is strongest, right? So you got to think, for me, especially in this first bottle release, it's about getting in the most brand loyal hands. I say our canned cocktail is kind of the t-shirt toss you see between innings, that like, hey, this is cool. Like, who doesn't like a free t-shirt? Here's a great day drink that it's fun to have at the golf course. And then we want our bottle to be the home run ball, the fan catching the home run, jumping up and down, because once that happens, everybody knows, like, I want that experience, right? And so if we can get that with our bottles, then we have a fan on our side already. And, when you're talking, we're kind of handcuffed by a limited production. So it's important to get it in the right hands of the people that get it the most. Yeah. And so that's where, we obviously look at Chicago. You think of a St. Louis, of course, and then you look at DC with Clip and I having a majority of our career out there and having our little duo we want to go out there and touch that market because, like I said, it's about connecting with the baseball fans. And, like I said, it's all about people who get it.
Yeah, that's great. Drew, I've had a lot of fun watching your career from a very early age. Of course, I've been good friends with your dad, worked with him many years ago at Channel 6. And Mark, a very accomplished media personality, not just here in Indiana, but nationally as well. And Drew, Mark, and Pam are just are super people. What do you remember about growing up in Indiana, those early days? Because sports, I know you played with and against my oldest son, were very important, obviously.
Yeah, it was great. I'm so grateful to have the experiences I did with Dad, and glad that Dad wasn't afraid to, maybe bend some rules to have me come tag along. Because I learned so much about what it could be if you put the work in, and, just to be around it, like to think about now as a dad, to see how far I had to go to make it to the big leagues. It's unbelievable. Right. And as a kid, whether it was playing horse with Reggie before games or, any of that, to play in the big leagues, to understand the amount of work and support it took from both parents, like absolutely incredible. And I think that's the number one thing that he taught, balance too, and like the ability to attack a problem a day at a time. That was the thing. He would come back from the station, right, and be like, all right, what's one thing you did today to get better? That was it. And that's still the number one piece of advice I tell kids. And that's like the way I took on this company, right? Like you can't build a company overnight. And so the more that I can just rinse and repeat the same attack that I had to baseball, going a day at a time, like here's a checklist. Instead of working on my changeup today, I'm going to make sure and send this distribution email out, right? And so I think for me, it was great because it wasn't a job. And, it was something that I learned to not be numb to it, like just be overwhelmed once I did have the opportunity to be around it. So that's something I can't be more grateful for.
Yeah. What do you remember some of those? You mentioned playing horse with Reggie Miller, but your dad was one of we used to call him the hardest working man in broadcasting because he put in the work, put in the hours. But here locally, he obviously was exposed to all kinds of sports situations that I think he brought you along and exposed you to that. What do you remember about that? What any good stories?
Oh man,
probably lots.
I remember I was lucky enough to go on the Pacers team plane. So it was going to Chicago. It was the first time I was introduced to probably some gambling on a flight, which I guess I wasn't shell shocked when I got to the big leagues on that. But no, I would say, to be able to, I got to do the breakdown in the tunnel before the game. Yeah, I mean, I would say the coolest thing, the bullpen story I always told guys was when Reggie Miller came to my birthday party. That's a pretty Hall of Fame story there. That like at the time, obviously I thought it was cool, but now I just know how absurd it was.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably my number one go-to right there.
Yeah. What any takeaways as you observed professional athletes or elite or high level athletes as a kid? Any takeaways that you think you utilized when you became a professional?
I would say the biggest thing was just when I would bat boy, when the Expos were around, I would just watch guys in their routine. Because especially the last time I did it, I was like 13, 14 years old. So I was able to see how everybody kind of went about it differently. Yeah. And then, and that's when I really started, that's the other thing I would say the biggest thing that Dad taught me was the ability to ask questions and not be, he forced me to talk to people as a kid, which, you see kids get shy. So I was never afraid to ask questions when I was a bat boy. So I would pick, the bullpen coach's brain or whatever it was and just learn. And that's the way that when I got one of my first big league camp, right, I was months out of college and I'm playing with 10-year vets. Well, I asked them everything because what's the point of me learning it when I can fast track it? And again, fast forward to the whiskey business, it's exactly the same thing. Right?
Yeah. That's a great story. What you had great success in high school with the Brownsburg. You won state championship, right? At Brownsburg. Yep. What was that experience like? Lance Lynn was on that team with you, right?
Yeah. So he was our ace, and then I would play first, and we would just switch every other game. And the amount of home runs that we hit, it was unbelievable. That's one of the best games I've ever seen. Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about that. Not one time we had a bad day and let one slip to go undefeated. And I just remember how, massive. Lance was the same size, hitting hitting homers that I've never seen go that far still to this day. Right. But, I think the cool part about that, it was just a continuation of the Little League success and the way that brought Brownsburg together and really identified it as a baseball town. Obviously we have plenty of other athletes now that have done great things, but, it was really cool because at the time, other high school teams didn't really have fan sections. We did, everybody came and that was the thing to do, and that's just something that, when you're playing for that higher purpose, like that's really cool. It's not a me game. It's a we game. Right. And so that's really neat, especially when you see how much it means, to people from Brownsburg.
Yeah. You went to Stanford. What was the recruiting process like? Did you think of any other schools to attend to study and play baseball?
Yeah. So my main filter was if they had a product design or industrial design major. So if they didn't, I wasn't going to consider it. So luckily there were some good baseball schools that had it. But I also had to make sure that, before Stanford could give me an offer, I had to get in normally. So I had some safety, some really good schools in case I didn't get in. I really like Georgia Tech. I went to Auburn, Clemson, and then USC. So I had some really awesome options that I never would have dreamed of having. But when Stanford told me I got in, I knew that was the fit for me.
Yeah. Hey, I got to ask you before you talk about majoring in product design. Is that a natural progression from your dad, who I've known him all these years, and I didn't know how talented he is in terms of craftsmanship and making things, woodworking, and just some unbelievable designs and things. You take after your dad in that regard?
I think it's that, and my mom is a graphic designer. So
that's right. That's right. Of course, she was a graphic designer at Channel 6. Yeah.
So I kind of get the double whammy there. And the nice thing was, Dad would come home and I would play catch with him and hit and all that. And then when he was gone, I would go up to Mom's office and I had my own table. So I would draw and do all of this stuff. So I've always just had that itch to do it. And and obviously both of them are incredibly talented. Yes. So come by it honestly.
That's neat. Hey, what was the Stanford experience like? Because Stanford to me, is one of those unique schools where the academic bar is set very high. The academic rigor is substantial. And certainly in baseball, when you were there, and from time to time in basketball, football, and they compete at the highest levels when it comes to athletics. What was that experience like?
Extremely humbling. Going into my freshman dorm, because you go in and I wasn't afraid to kind of be digging myself a little bit, right? Like baseball scholarship guy, like, okay. And I walked in and I go, I am in way over my skis. Like, these guys are way smarter than me. And I had a kid in my freshman dorm essentially set up a Netflix server in 2008.
Really?
And so you just have these stories of people, and, you don't matter. Like, as extraordinary as I might have been at baseball at that time, it was nothing compared to what, these guys are doing. It's pretty for me, and I still stay in touch with the guys. And that's what's special, because everybody's wired differently, but it's a small school. There's only 6,000 undergrads. So, it's a big high school essentially. So it's special. And like I said, I think that was the number one thing, was the humbling side of it. Okay, maybe I do have a lot of learning to do here.
That's neat. Well, hey, we're going to talk about life after Stanford. Major League Baseball came calling at Stanford in the form of a top 10 draft pick. We'll talk life in the major leagues and a lot more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Drew Storen, Brownsburg native, former major leaguer, now a bourbon business guys built a what appears to be an incredible brand, a launching Field of Dreams whiskey, Field of Dreams bourbon, selling in a big way here in Indiana and many other markets as well. Hey, Drew, you were drafted by the Yankees, right, out of high school in the 34th round. Did you think about jumping to the majors at that point, or you were on a path you wanted to go to college?
Yeah, so the Yankees ended up picking me, but we talked to some other teams early on in the draft that they made competitive runs, but that if I was in charge, I probably would have done it, but in a very short-minded mindset. So that's where Dad taught me the long game, and the importance of keeping that in mind. And I think that worked out for the best, because for me to go to have the opportunity to play in Omaha is the closest thing I think to the big leagues. So I knew that the minor league lifestyle wasn't the most glamorous thing in the world. So I wanted to kind of hedge my bet. So then that way I never had to really play baseball as a job.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were the 10th pick in the 2009 draft by the Washington Nationals. What do you remember about that experience, and how did it work? I assume you knew you were going to get picked. Did you get a call? What was that process like?
Yeah. So luckily I got picked when I did, because Mom and Dad had a bunch of people over, because I have been kind of a Brady Quinn moment there. So I'm glad I
right.
Let's get that out of the way. But yeah, so my agent called and said, hey, if this guy's off the board, the Nationals might take you. That was all I got. So I saw okay, that guy came off the board, then that inserted that guy coming off, but I still didn't know. So I found out just like anybody else. And then so when Bud Selig got up there, I was like, it was weird. It was the biggest flood of emotions.
I'll bet. Yeah, talk about that, because I can't imagine, what goes through your mind, as you say, a flood of emotions. I mean, you think about, probably all the way back to playing catch with your dad to Little League and all the work it took to get to that point.
Yeah, I feel like, it's just one of those moments. It's so rare when it's like, your life just got completely changed.
Right.
Like immediately. And like you said, it's a culmination of all those long hours, long road trips, all the work to just a true reward. I think that's the beauty of sports and, baseball and stuff like that, where you're just clearly rewarded. You are picked, where business side, you don't always have W's every day, right? You don't have to have that where it's like, here you go, you're rewarded for this. Here's this incredible opportunity. You better make the most of it, So it was like, I just kind of went like, wow. Like it just, like you said, there's very few things that can kind of just essentially pause you. And, it was extremely special to have everybody there to celebrate. And like I said, I'm glad it happened. So it wasn't an awkward goodbye.
Yeah, it's good. What about your first minor league assignment? Where did you go?
Went to Hagerstown, Maryland.
Okay.
And so it was nice because my college roommate was actually on the team. So he's still one of my best friends to this day, but so it was nice to have somebody built in. Yeah. And so we had a host family, and it was pretty special. But again, it was another humbling experience for me, because my first outing, I figured I was in the Pac-10 at the time. These guys are in A-ball, like I'm this guy. And so I go ball one, and just I'm gonna reach back, throw a fastball by whoever this guy is, Travis d'Arnaud, who's managed to have a pretty good career. And he hit it about 580 dead center. And my buddy roommate's doing the radar gun behind the net, just laughing hysterically at me. And I gave it a smile, and I go, yeah, these guys are professionals.
Yeah.
Okay. But it was so great. And, that's part of the fun.
Talk about life in the minor leagues. So you didn't have to experience it nearly as long as most players do. But what is life in minor league baseball like?
Yeah, my hopefully none of my old teammates hear me talk about this, because they'll say you have no right to talk about this stuff. But yeah, it's amazing, the guys that have really stuck it out, man. Like when you see those stories, that the guys that grind and get that shot, like, I mean, that's teary-eyed stuff every time, because it's like that. I only had a couple really long bus trips, and I got a pool raft, and I inflated it and put it on the floor and slept on it. So and that's your sleep for the night. There's your there's usually, at the time, there was an inverse relationship with how nice the stadium was to what your team hotel was. So if you're nicer team hotel, I'll put that loosely, the stadium was tough, right? So, and vice versa. So you guys, it builds character, to say the least.
Yeah. What do you remember about getting called up? What was that like when you got that call and you were going out to the big club?
Yeah, I would say it was kind of another one of those draft day kind of feelings, like it's something that you always dream of, and what would I do in that situation? And, they pitched me early in that game, I remember. And, I came in like the fifth and I was closing. I'm like, that's weird. And I only got one out, and then they're like, you're done. And I'm like, I wasn't happy. And they're like, just go in there and talk to the manager about it. And then he's like, you're going up. I'm like, oh, like finally I get to make that call, like, cause that's the first thought, right? Like I get to call mom and dad and be like, yeah, we did it. So like, that's so cool. And, that first day there, and it was great that it was in St. Louis too. Like that's just storybook, cause that's one of the places I used to bat boy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it was pretty neat.
Your first full year in the big leagues, Drew, 2011. You had how many? You had over 40 saves, right?
43 saves. Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive stuff. What was that first full year like for you in Major League Baseball, and to achieve that success that early in your career?
It was a blast because we had such a good bullpen. The thing is, the only reason I had so many saves is because I was only throwing one inning, because I had really good setup guys. So Clippard being one of them, but we just had it was a 6-inning game, and I was able to learn the routine and just going, okay, this is what I need to do every day, and it's rinse and repeat, right? And if the only time I had nerves was if I didn't prepare correctly, and you learn to just kind of listen to your body. And, again, that's where a veteran guy like Clippard and whoever would help with taking care of your body and making sure that, it's not going to feel great, but the days, and I probably like golf, right? The days it does feel good, it never works out well. So it's right in that grind, embracing the grind. So I think that was the number one thing. And, just go attack and lose being you.
How about the mental aspect? I mean, a reliever. I mean, you look at, quarterbacks with incomplete passes or receivers, dropping ball, having a short memory. From a mental standpoint, I mean, being a reliever, closer, in your case, that's a tough job. I mean, to come in and put the fire out in tough situations. Were there any special things you did mentally to prepare yourself? But also deal with what happened, or whether it be positive or negative?
Yeah, I always just had to try to simplify things. For me, I would tend to overcomplicate it and assume that the hitter up there is trying to play Bobby Fischer chess with me. But in reality, it's more like Cracker Barrel checkers, like those guys, because it's late in the game, and those guys aren't really preparing for a closer like they are a starter, where they need to worry about like what you threw them 2 weeks ago. It's like, essentially, if I simplified it to go, if I could throw a fastball down and away, I could get 3 outs. And was that true? No, but it was just a nice, safe thing for me to attack and go, this is all you have to do. You don't need to go out and do anything extraordinary. This is why you're here. If I just kept reminding myself, and it's the old, the Hoosiers mentality, right?
Yeah.
If I have to win 2 of the first 3 pitches with every hitter, and I'll be successful.
Yeah. I want to take you back to probably what was a tough a time, a low point of your career. And I bring it up because of the way you dealt with it. And that was in Game 5 of the divisional series. Was it 2011 against the Cardinals?
2012.
2012. Mm-hmm. You came in a tough situation. The Nationals had the lead. You got 2 outs. And I was watching the game, and I thought you were getting completely squeezed by the umpire. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I'm a Cardinal fan, I've got to admit. But I am like, what the heck? Well, anyway, the Cardinals end up winning that game. So very, very tough loss. But I remember seeing, and I have read since then, that the way you dealt with that was so impressive in terms of answering every question the media had, and after that tough loss. What do you remember about that, and dealing with that in what I thought was such a class way?
Thank you. Yeah, I just remember after the game going, oh man, this is one of the situations, huh? Like, it's gonna be
Right.
tough. You have so much going on. And, I just remember, going back to dad telling me, like, the sooner you face the music, the sooner it goes away, and within that too, I was always a big believer, rain or shine, you needed to talk. Because for me, like, I didn't like fair weather teammates.
Yeah.
And that was for me. My job was to show up every day, and you should not know whether I blew the save or got the save last night. And on top of that, I want to be in control of the dialogue, like a writer. Sure, they know what they're talking about, but they're not out there, right? There's so much more that's going through their head or our heads, whatever it is, that like I might as well get my quote in there and say, this is actually what was going on. And like, yeah, it didn't work. Like if you're playing high stakes roulette every night, like that's what closing is. Like that's it. There's rarely an in between. And if you're going to be doing that, like, and getting there, be there for the parades, you better be there for the storms too,
Yeah. Yeah. Can you pick a high point? I'm sure there are several in your career. What was the maybe the best day of your pro career?
I would say from a like personal and team standpoint, I came in and closed the postseason clinching game for the first time, in the Nationals franchise. Right. And I was facing 2, 3, 4 of the Dodgers. So that was like Hanley, Kemp, like just murderers row.
Right. Yeah.
And people and the stadium was packed. And so to go from, the year before when we lost 100 games, to that, it was like, so the full culmination, right? Because I've always paralleled the Nationals with the Colts when they came here. That, and I would say, Strasburg was the Peyton, right? And then, you add in Harper, which, insert Reggie or Marvin or whoever, right? Like, so we put DC baseball, we weren't the secondary flavor anymore. And so that was kind of cool to see that, all that hard work, and see how everything kind of came together. And then I think from just one of the cooler things that I'm proud of is when I threw my immaculate inning with the Reds. I probably had some pretty diluted stuff compared to what I had early in my career, but I got to throw it to my high school teammate, Tucker Barnhart. I'm pretty sure that's never happened before, to have high school battery get an immaculate inning. So I would say that's one of my favorite moments right there.
Describe for those listening, Drew, what an immaculate inning is.
So it's 9 pitches, 3 strikeouts. So just 9 straight strikes. And I'm proud of mine too, because I didn't change the ball. I didn't have a foul tip. It was the same ball all the way through.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's all, but for me, like an immaculate inning to a bullpen guy is like our perfect game, because we, so that's always just been our thing, that we always sit in the bullpen. And I remember the first time we were talked about in the big leagues, I was a pitch away that night and I missed it. And I was like, oh, so it was always the looming thing that I'm like, man, if I always get it. And that in Cincy, I got the first 2 strikeouts. I go, I can't mess this one up.
Yeah. Yeah. You were traded from the Nationals you went to Toronto, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What, talk about that, those next number of years. I know Toronto, you mentioned Cincinnati. Where else?
So after I was with Seattle, and then I went from Toronto to Seattle, and then signed as free agent with Cincy. And then at the end of my 2017 season, I had Tommy John, and then went to big camp with the Royals, and then Phillies at the end.
Yeah. What was the decision made? I mean, every athlete, comes to that time they got to make a decision. Hey, is it time to give it up? What was that process like for you?
It was just a lot of self-awareness, really. I knew, it changes when you have kids, obviously, and the amount of sacrifice that it takes, for my wife and everybody else, like that's a lot. And I know myself that I need to be 1,000% invested, obsessed with it. And I wanted to be the first one to read the writing on the wall at the same time, right? Yeah. I didn't want to be, oh man, like why? And I just knew that I really love this idea to do bourbon. And I was like, this seems fun. This is something that I can maverick the same way that I did early in my baseball career, versus like, okay, I might get a chance, because in reality, I had been living out of a suitcase, probably up and down, or who knows, in AAA. And, I'm missing out on some of those years that I'm being nostalgic about dad and all the great things that I got to do with him. I would be losing out on that opportunity with my kids, because like, I wouldn't be an everyday big leaguer that it'd be like, hey, come out to the field. It would be like, hey, I might be AAA going 4A all around, that, I think I could better spend time and hang out with him a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Drew, it's been a real treat to catch up with you. You truly very proud of all you've accomplished and happy for your success in this new career. And I can't wait to taste some of that Field of Dreams whiskey too. Congratulations on all your success, Drew, and give my best to your folks and good luck in everything you do.
Absolutely, Gary. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. It is a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can hear all 120 plus episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. Just go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.